difficult to say. I think on the information that we have right now, I think probably like a I'm going to give a weird number here, 30% chance happening. I think I need a little bit more details on it and a bit more details as to the conversation they had because I believe Jake Paul posted a screenshot of them on the phone agreeing to maybe something in 2026. And see where Joshua is. I mean, Joshua stated that this year he wanted to have the potential of having a world title fight or Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury doesn't seem to be happening. A world title fight, he seems to be frozen out of the picture. So what is Joshua doing this year? What is he waiting on? What is he unfortunately injured, taking him out of the a fight from? Was it Martin Bakoli? What was in the picture for him? We don't really know. Does he want to do his business in pro boxing and then move on to something outside of it and maybe have like a little bit of a retirement tour in the YouTuber boxing sort of scene? I think I think because Jake Paul brings a certain amount of viewership and eyes and business, I do think it has legs where it can happen. So I'd never rule it out. And I would never say it's pie in the sky type of thing. It's a real brilliant journey that Jake Paul has been on. If you look at it outside of a hardcore boxing lens as to where he's positioned himself in amongst the scene and the faces of boxing who can command and bring in Netflix into the scene with fights. And it seems to be that they're interested in more than just that one-off event in boxing with the continuation with Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano again. So I think it really is a possibility. What I would say is I'm concerned about, though, Danny, is I'm concerned that Eddie Hearn's now coming out and saying that Anthony Joshua is injured. And I believe in one of the interviews recently, it might have been IFL or it might have been the Ring interview. Either way, one of the interviews he gave recently, he said he wouldn't give away the details of the injury, but he said that the interview is to do with the top half of his body. Now, my sources say that Anthony Joshua has had, and the reason for his injury pulling him out from the rematch with Daniel Dubois was to do with an injury in the lower half of his body. So if you top up that there's an injury at the lower half of his body and an injury at the top half of his body, is this a sign for Anthony Joshua that like you've got to start getting those last few paydays maybe because the body isn't as sprightly or as young or as healing or as quick as it used to before, and now you've got to look at the exit door of the sport and maximizing as much as you can out of it because these things start to rack up, and you don't want someone like Anthony Joshua. You wouldn't want to see forced out the sport because they couldn't. Rather, they left the sport because they could, and I'd hate to see that for Anthony Joshua if that was his fate. But we'll see when he recovers. We'll see how good he recovers from these injuries. I know that his team and himself don't want to really talk about injuries because they don't want to use it for excuses. Because no one really cares after the fact if you had this, that, and the other, and they just never really wanted to play the violin in that, and I respect them for that. But it might mean that some of the fights that we wanted to see might not come to fruition because you can't make it.
Okay, so we're going to put a poll out because some of you have already shat all over the potential fight. Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul, will you pay for it? So not will you watch it on some dodgy stream, would you be willing to pay money for it? Let us know. The first vote's just gone in as a no, so no great shock there. So let's see what happens with that. Bernard H says the gonorrhea would be the Haneys, referring back to Cloud Strife's post, although he has actually replied himself, so it doesn't count until we hear from Cloud Strife. He says, enjoy it. Bernard H this says, enjoying watching my break. Keep it up. Hulusi Ozdemir says, I'm hearing rumors that AJ is going to fight Jake Paul. Was it our headline or our thumbnail that got you going, Hulusi? Porter says, was Sky Nicholson overhyped? She fought no names and already lost the world title. I mean, who in female boxing, especially at Sky's weight, counts as a name? So I'm not sure if she was overhyped. She was a good amateur. You know, she won pretty clearly a lot of her fights. I've got no issue with the amount of hype. Porter, I can't read your next comment, unfortunately, about Sky Nicholson and Eddie Hearn. We'd get in trouble for that. But he also says, what's worse, Jake Paul for boxing or the sport power slap? I mean, I don't think Jake Paul's bad for boxing necessarily. I think it makes it maybe look a bit too accessible and like something anyone can do, and that isn't true for the level of boxing that the top fighters are at. But I don't think he's necessarily bad for boxing. I think he's probably encouraged some young generation people who follow him to actually try boxing or go down to their local gym. So I'm not fussed about that. Skylar Wicker says it's a huge step down for AJ. Wake up, sir. AJ's on a different level than Paul. He's sea level. Please, sir, find a new job. You are not an analyst. It's an analyst, Skylar. Cloud Strife, thank God. The question we've all waited for them to answer says, gonorrhea is John Fury. I'll let you tell him that. But has been cleared up with a strong course of Usyk antibiotics. What, Usyk biotics? Antibiotics? I'm not sure. Custody system, Dennis. Gad, Gareth A. Davis, thinks the fight will happen because of money involved and people want to see Jake Paul knocked out. Gad also feels the AJ versus JP leads to a Fury fight. All day, everyday boxing says it won't happen. Spore Clay, don't know how to say that. Jake Paul is world-class boxer, so glad I didn't spend too long trying to work out how to pronounce that. MB says, no chance I'll stream it. Paul says, I wouldn't pay. I've got the dodgy stick, thank God. Andrew Maguire says, depends on the rest of the card. Very good point. Spore Clay, Jake Paul may be the one to beat Usyk. Thunder Road says, chat and viewers not in chat, hit the thumbs up. 80 plus watching and only 30 plus likes. Thank you, Thunder Road, taking your usual position in doing this. So Ayman, we've just put the poll out. Will people watch it? Will you watch it? I'm pretty sure you will, but answer for yourself in a minute. Also, exactly how many rounds do you think Jake Paul can last if it happens?
So easy question out of the way. Yes, I would watch it. Big fan of being entertained, and I think it'd be entertaining both the build-up. I think they'd put a huge undercard underneath it as well too. I think it'd be an interesting and eventful occasion. I'd happily watch that fight. How long can Jake Paul last against Anthony Joshua? So this is a little bit funny because myself and a few other media outlets were invited up to the Rotunda in Liverpool the other day, and another prominent reporter in the scene, in the form of, well, maybe not so prominent, he's a little bit of a unheralded reporter in the form of Daniel Gilfillan, said, as we were watching Liam Smith go on the pads with trainer Joe McNally, he said, how long do you think you could last in the ring with Liam Smith? And I was like, probably not long, maybe like 30 seconds. And Danny was like going, maybe a little bit longer. And we then watched Liam Smith start whipping shots into the body and combinations in first phases and second phases and more. And then we kind of looked at each other and went, nah. So I would imagine seeing Liam Smith up close and personal and other fighters that I've seen before. I know this is just, Danny, I won't name names here, but I've heard reporters say in the scene, maybe I'll use the word reporters loosely in this occasion, and people in the scene will know who I'm on about here, but I don't want to name names. But I've heard people say that they think they'd last rounds with Gervonta Davis and things like that. It's mad. Some of it, I know, crazy. But anyway, that's a sidebar.
You can text me later who that was.
I will. No problem. Yeah. The truth is, if all things were equal and it was a legitimate fight, then I would say Jake Paul would probably last around, if that. But there's all sorts of rumors abound, all sorts of unconfirmed rumors, of course, that Jake Paul puts into contracts clauses that you can't do this, or you can't hurt him there, that sort of thing, that makes it less of a actual competitive fight in the traditional sense and more of an event, more of a, I guess, a blockbuster movie set piece of a fight. And if that's the case, then you might still get an eventful fight where AJ might not be able to hit to the head as hard as he would be able to hit to the body, kind of thing, and Jake Paul gets a bit protected and everyone comes out laughing and happy that they made a load of money and no one gets seriously hurt. But the truth of the matter is, if it was a proper fight, I would not be backing Jake Paul by any means to get the victory or to escape out of a round, despite how well he's progressed, I feel, in the sport.